For most of us, the idea of being truly seen feels like standing under a spotlight with nowhere to hide. It feels terrifying, almost unbearable, because when we allow ourselves to be seen, we open the door to judgment, rejection, and criticism. We fear the whispers of others, the raised eyebrows, the silent dismissals. And so we put on masks. We present polished versions of ourselves, carefully edited to appear strong, confident, untouchable. But here is the truth. Those masks may protect us from the sting of rejection, but they also rob us of the fullness of connection, of authenticity, of life itself. Vulnerability has long been mistaken for weakness. People are taught from a young age to be tough, to hold it together, to never let them see you sweat. But I want you to consider this. What if vulnerability is not weakness at all? What if it is, in fact, the purest form of courage? Because think about it. Anyone can put on armor and hide, but it takes true strength to step out into the world without guarantees, to let yourself be seen in your most authentic, unfiltered form. Vulnerability is not about exposing everything to everyone. It is about the bravery to say, "This is who I am," even when you don't know how people will respond. We live in a culture that praises perfection, the flawless performance, the curated life on social media, the spotless resume. We are conditioned to believe that worthiness is earned through achievement, success, and appearances. And yet, beneath the surface, every single one of us knows that perfection is a myth. No one's life is perfect. No one's heart is unbroken. No one's journey is without scars. And the irony is, it is those very imperfections that make us human, that make us relatable, that make us beautiful. Vulnerability is the bridge between our humanity and our strength. Think about the people who inspire you the most. Is it because they were flawless, or is it because they had the courage to share their struggles? We don't connect with perfection. We connect with truth. When a leader admits they don't have all the answers but is still willing to listen and learn, that's courage. When an artist shares the raw emotions behind their work, that's vulnerability. When a friend says, "I'm not okay right now," and lets you in, that's strength. Every story that has moved you, every moment that has inspired you, carried within it the courage of someone willing to be seen. Vulnerability is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to show up despite fear. It is standing on shaky legs, with a trembling voice and saying, "Here I am." And that moment, as fragile as it feels, is where strength is born. Because strength is not about being unbreakable. Strength is about knowing you can survive being broken and still rise again. Strength is not about silence. It is about finding the courage to speak your truth. Strength is not about hiding the scars. It is about carrying them as proof that you fought, you endured, you lived. Imagine a world where no one was willing to be vulnerable. There would be no love stories, no art, no innovation, no breakthroughs. Every great invention, every meaningful relationship, every moment of progress came from someone daring to risk failure, ridicule, or rejection. Vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity, of connection, of change. And yet we run from it because it feels uncomfortable. But comfort has never been the soil where courage grows. So today, I want to invite you to see vulnerability not as a liability, but as your greatest strength. To understand that being seen in your realness and your rawness is not something to fear. It is something to embrace. Yes, it may feel terrifying. Yes, it may feel uncertain. But courage has always been born in the space where fear and faith collide. And the courage to be seen is the courage to step fully into your life, to stop hiding, to stop pretending, to start living. Because the truth is this: the people who will love you for who you are. The people who will connect with you will connect with your authenticity, not your mask. And the strength you are searching for, it has been within you all along, waiting for you to take off the armor, to let the world see you, and to realize that your vulnerability is not your weakness, it is your superpower. The fear of being seen is one of the most powerful fears we carry, though most of us never name it out loud. It sits beneath the surface, shaping the way we speak, the way we act, the way we present ourselves to the world. It's the quiet hesitation before raising your hand in a meeting. It's the pause before sharing an idea, because you're not sure how others will respond. It's the lump in your throat when you want to tell someone you love them, but you're terrified of what they might say in return. We all carry this fear, and it whispers to us the same lie. If they really see you, they won't accept you. From childhood, many of us were taught to build walls. Maybe someone told you that crying was a sign of weakness. Maybe you shared something personal once and it was used against you. Maybe you were laughed at for a dream you dared to voice. Every one of those moments leaves a scar, a reminder to hide. Over time, the hiding becomes automatic. You learn to filter your words, to shrink your feelings, to package yourself in a way that looks safe. But what feels safe in the moment slowly becomes suffocating. Because in protecting yourself from being hurt, you also protect yourself from being truly known. The irony is that this fear of being seen doesn't protect us from pain. It often creates more of it. When you hide who you are, you cut yourself off from authentic connection. You keep relationships at the surface, afraid that if someone gets too close, they'll see the cracks. You might feel lonely even when you're surrounded by people. And deep down, there's a part of you that aches to be known, that longs for someone to say, "I see you and I accept you." Fear is sneaky. It disguises itself as logic, as caution, as self-preservation. You'll hear it say, "Don't share this, they'll judge you." Or, "Don't risk it, you'll embarrass yourself." It sounds convincing, but here's the truth. Fear's real mission is to keep you small. It convinces you that invisibility is safety, but in reality, invisibility is a prison. And the cost of living unseen is far greater than the cost of rejection. Think of the times you admired someone for their courage. Maybe it was a friend who admitted they were struggling. Maybe it was a leader who shared a mistake instead of pretending to be perfect. Maybe it was an artist whose work felt raw and personal, as if they were bearing their soul. What moved you was not their perfection. It was their willingness to be seen. And yet, when it comes to ourselves, we act as though showing our truth will drive people away. The opposite is true. Vulnerability draws people in. It creates trust. It builds bridges. It deepens connection. But here is where the tension lies. Being seen always comes with risk. Not everyone will applaud your courage. Some people may misunderstand, criticize, or even reject you. And that possibility feels unbearable. But the choice we face is this. Will we live small lives, edited and hidden? Or will we take the risk of being seen and discover the freedom that comes with it? Because hiding may protect you from some rejection, but it will also guarantee that you never feel the full depth of love, connection, or belonging. To face the fear of being seen, we must begin by naming it. We must acknowledge the armor we wear and the stories we tell ourselves. We must ask, what am I so afraid people will see in me? Often the answer is tied to shame, to the belief that we are not enough as we are. But when you face that fear, when you challenge it, when you take even one step toward showing up more authentically, something shifts. You begin to realize that the world does not end when you are seen. And slowly you discover that the very thing you feared, exposure, can become the very thing that sets you free. Being seen is scary, yes, but it is also where the magic happens. It is where relationships become real, where creativity flows, where courage is born. The fear will never disappear completely, but courage has never meant the absence of fear. Courage means feeling the fear, hearing the whispers of doubt, and choosing to show up anyway. And every time you choose to be seen, you weaken the power of fear. Because here is the deeper truth. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of being seen. You just have to be real. And real will always be enough. Vulnerability has been misunderstood for far too long. We have been taught to believe that it is fragile, that it makes us weak, that it exposes us to danger. But let's pause for a moment and ask ourselves, is it really weakness to open your heart, to share your truth, to take a risk with no guarantees? Or is that the purest act of courage? Vulnerability is not about spilling everything to everyone. It is not about oversharing or making yourself a victim. Vulnerability is about standing in your truth, without armor, and saying, "This is who I am." That is not weakness, that is power. Think about the greatest acts of bravery you've ever witnessed. The firefighter running into a burning building, the parent working 3 jobs to give their children a better life, the leader admitting they made a mistake and asking for forgiveness. None of these acts come from a place of invincibility. They all come from a place of vulnerability, because at their core, they involve risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. Without vulnerability, there is no courage. They are not opposites. They are partners. The mistake we often make is confusing vulnerability with recklessness. But to be vulnerable doesn't mean you tell everyone your deepest secrets, or that you expose yourself to people who have not earned your trust. That's not courage. That's carelessness. True vulnerability is intentional. It is choosing to share your authentic self in spaces where trust and connection are possible. It's allowing yourself to be known by the people who matter, even when it feels uncomfortable. When we redefine vulnerability as strength, we begin to shift the way we live. Suddenly, speaking up in that meeting doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like courage. Admitting you don't know the answer doesn't feel like failure. It feels like honesty. Telling someone you love them first doesn't feel like surrender. It feels like bravery. Every act of vulnerability is an act of strength because it takes more courage to risk being hurt than it does to hide. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you choose vulnerability, you actually become stronger. Why? Because strength is not the absence of fear or pain. Strength is the ability to carry fear and pain and keep showing up anyway. Vulnerability teaches resilience. It shows you that even if you are rejected, you can survive. Even if you fail, you can learn and rise again. Even if your heart breaks, it can heal stronger than before. Vulnerability is the training ground for true strength. Let me give you an example. Think of an artist sharing their work with the world. They have no guarantee that people will love it. They risk criticism, dismissal, even ridicule. But without that willingness to be vulnerable, the art never reaches anyone. The same is true in our lives. If we wait until we are certain, until we are bulletproof, until there is no chance of failure, we will never create, never connect, never truly live. Vulnerability is the price of admission to a meaningful life. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, I can't let them see this side of me, it's weak. I want you to pause and flip that script. Remind yourself that what feels like weakness in the moment is actually evidence of courage. Hiding may feel safe, but it is not strong. True strength comes from the courage to be real. And here's the final truth. People don't connect with your masks. They connect with your humanity. They are not inspired by your perfection. They are inspired by your honesty. Redefining vulnerability as strength allows us to build deeper relationships, to create braver work, and to live lives that are not dictated by fear, but guided by authenticity. Vulnerability is not your downfall. It is your foundation. And when you stand on that foundation, you discover a strength you never knew you had. The strength to live boldly, to love deeply, and to show up fully as yourself. Authenticity is one of the rarest and most powerful gifts you can give to yourself and to the world. Yet for many of us, authenticity feels like a risk we cannot afford to take. We learn to edit ourselves, to present only the parts that we think will be accepted, respected, or admired. We polish our lives like a highlight reel and hope no one notices the outtakes. But authenticity is not about perfection. It is about honesty. It is the courage to say, this is me, messy, imperfect, and real. Why is authenticity so powerful? Because people are starved for it. We live in a world where filters, branding, and performance dominate. We scroll through endless images of curated lives and compare them to our unedited reality. But beneath the surface, we all crave what is real. We crave voices that sound human, stories that reveal struggle, and people who are willing to admit they don't have it all figured out. Authenticity cuts through noise because it carries truth, and truth has a weight that cannot be ignored. When you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. Think about the times you've felt the most at ease with someone. Chances are it wasn't when they were showing off their achievements or trying to impress you. It was when they were being real, when they admitted their fears, laughed at their mistakes, or spoke openly about their journey. Authenticity creates connection because it speaks to the parts of us that are human, not the parts of us that are polished. But authenticity doesn't come without struggle. It requires us to risk rejection. When you choose to be authentic, not everyone will like you. Not everyone will understand you. Some may even walk away, and that is hard. But the cost of abandoning authenticity is far greater. When you betray who you are just to be accepted, you may gain approval, but you lose yourself. And what good is approval if it costs you your peace, your joy, your soul? Living authentically also means embracing your imperfections. Our culture tells us to hide flaws, to cover scars, to strive endlessly for flawlessness. But imperfections are not weaknesses. They are markers of humanity. They are proof that you have lived, that you have tried, that you have risked. When you own your imperfections instead of hiding them, you discover that they no longer control you. Shame loses its power when spoken out loud, and fear loses its grip when faced with honesty. Authenticity is not loudness or rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's not about defying others just to prove a point. It is a quiet, steady decision to live aligned with your values, your truth, and your heart. It is saying yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no. It is choosing presence over performance, integrity over image, substance over style. The most authentic people are not perfect. They are consistent. They do not wear different masks depending on the room they enter. They show up as themselves, regardless of who is watching. That consistency builds trust. And trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, whether in friendship, love, leadership, or community. There will be moments when authenticity feels too costly, when the temptation to hide or perform feels overwhelming. But in those moments, remember this: every time you choose authenticity, you build inner strength. Every time you choose authenticity, you deepen connection. Every time you choose authenticity, you create space for freedom. Because living authentically means you no longer have to waste energy pretending. You can finally use that energy to live, to love, to grow. Authenticity is power because it cannot be faked. It is undeniable. When someone speaks authentically, you feel it in your bones. When someone lives authentically, their life becomes a quiet revolution that inspires others. And when you choose authenticity for yourself, you step into a freedom that no approval, no performance, and no mask could ever give you. So here is the invitation. Stop performing. Stop hiding. Stop waiting to be flawless before you allow yourself to show up. The world doesn't need your perfection. It needs your truth. Your authenticity is your power, your strength, your light. And when you dare to live it, you not only change your own life, you give others the courage to change theirs. Connection is the heartbeat of our lives. No matter how independent, successful, or self-sufficient we try to be, at the end of the day, we are wired for connection. We long to be understood, to be accepted, to be loved not for the roles we play, not for the masks we wear, but for who we truly are. And here's the paradox. The very thing that builds connection, vulnerability, is also the very thing we spend so much of our lives avoiding. When you think about the people you're closest to, the relationships that feel the most meaningful, what makes them so, it isn't that those people have always been perfect. It isn't that they've never disappointed you or made mistakes. The bond is strong because at some point, both of you chose to be real. Someone admitted their fears. Someone confessed a mistake. Someone dared to say, I need you. That openness created trust. And trust is the foundation of connection. Without vulnerability, trust cannot exist. Without vulnerability, relationships stay shallow, transactional, polite. Yet many of us are taught to hide our softest parts. We hear messages like, don't let anyone see your weakness, or never show your cards. And so we build walls. But walls don't just keep out the pain. They also keep out love. You cannot selectively numb your emotions. If you block out fear and grief, you also block out joy and intimacy. If you hide your struggles, you also hide the doorway to deeper connection. Vulnerability feels risky, because it is. You can't guarantee how someone will respond, but every connection worth having is built on that risk. Think about moments when someone else's vulnerability touched you. Maybe a friend shared that they were struggling with anxiety, and suddenly you felt less alone. Maybe a colleague admitted they were nervous before a big presentation, and it gave you permission to be human too. Maybe a family member told you a story about their own failures, and it gave you the courage to face your own. Those moments of vulnerability didn't weaken the bond. They strengthened it. Because at the core, vulnerability says, I trust you enough to let you see me. And when someone responds with compassion, the connection deepens in a way that no performance ever could. Vulnerability also builds empathy. When you hear someone share their truth, it pulls you out of judgment and into understanding. It's harder to criticize when you've been invited into someone's humanity. That's why stories are so powerful. Data and facts may inform us, but stories, real vulnerable stories, move us. They remind us that we're not alone in our struggles, that someone else has walked this path, that pain and hope coexist. Vulnerability creates a thread between souls, weaving us together in ways that nothing else can. Of course, not every space is safe for vulnerability. Part of courage is discerning where and with whom you share your truth. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your story, but somewhere in your life with someone you trust, choosing vulnerability can be transformative. The moment you let down your guard and say, here's where I'm really at, you create the possibility of being known, and being known is the deepest human desire. When we connect through vulnerability, we discover something extraordinary. We don't have to carry everything alone. Our struggles become lighter when shared. Our joys become richer when celebrated with others. Our wounds begin to heal when witnessed by someone who cares. Connection doesn't erase pain, but it gives us the strength to endure it. It doesn't guarantee happiness, but it gives us the space to experience it more fully. So often we think connection requires us to be impressive, to have it all together, to offer something polished. But connection doesn't come from impressing. It comes from revealing. It comes from being brave enough to show your messy, imperfect, tender self and saying, "This is me." And when someone meets you there, when they look back at you and say, "I see you and I'm still here," that is the kind of connection that changes everything. The truth is this: love, trust, and belonging cannot grow in the absence of vulnerability. If we want real connection, we must be willing to risk being seen. And though that risk can feel terrifying, it is also the most life-giving risk you will ever take, because the reward of vulnerability is not just connection. It is the freedom of being known, fully and deeply, for exactly who you are. Growth does not come wrapped in comfort. Growth comes in the moments when we step into the unknown, when we take risks without guarantees, when we are willing to stumble, fall, and rise again. And that path, messy, uncertain, unpredictable, is paved with vulnerability. You cannot grow without it, because growth requires you to move beyond what is safe, to stretch beyond what is familiar, and to trust yourself in the face of uncertainty. Think about the first time you tried something new. Maybe it was standing on a stage in front of a crowd. Maybe it was applying for a job you weren't sure you'd get. Maybe it was telling someone you loved them for the very first time. In each of those moments, you had no guarantee of success. You risked embarrassment, rejection, or failure. That tension you felt in your chest, that was vulnerability. And yet those are also the moments that shape you, the moments that help you grow into more than you were before. We often want growth without discomfort. We want transformation without the stretching, the risk, the fear. But that's not how life works. You can't build strength without resistance. You can't discover courage without fear. And you can't experience growth without vulnerability. Vulnerability is the soil in which growth takes root. It is the willingness to say, "I don't know how this will end, but I'm willing to try." Failure is one of the greatest teachers of growth, but you only encounter it when you're willing to risk. If you only stay where you are comfortable, you never fail, but you also never grow. Vulnerability gives you permission to fail, to learn, and to rise. It tells you that stumbling is not the end of the story. It is part of the process. Every successful person you admire has a trail of failures behind them. But what sets them apart is not their perfection. It is their willingness to keep showing up vulnerably again and again. Consider this: a seed cannot grow unless it breaks open. The very act of growth requires vulnerability. The cracking, the stretching, the exposure to the elements. And yet, from that breaking, life emerges. In the same way, when you allow yourself to be vulnerable to new experiences, to risks, to uncertainty, you create the possibility of transformation. Without that openness, you remain stuck, unchanged, rooted in fear. Growth also requires feedback, and feedback requires vulnerability. To ask someone, "What do you see in me that I don't see?" or "Where can I do better?" is an act of courage. It opens the door to criticism, yes, but it also opens the door to wisdom, perspective, and growth you could never achieve alone. Vulnerability allows you to say, "Teach me, shape me, challenge me." And in that openness, you discover new layers of strength. Even in our relationships, growth comes through vulnerability. A friendship deepens when you are willing to admit where you've been wrong. A marriage strengthens when you're honest about your fears and dreams. Families heal when someone takes the first step to speak the truth. Without vulnerability, relationships remain stuck in surface patterns. With it, they have the chance to grow into something deeper, richer, more resilient. And here's the remarkable thing: every time you choose vulnerability in the service of growth, you expand your capacity for courage. The first time is always the hardest. The first risk feels unbearable. But once you survive it, once you discover that you can fail and rise, that you can risk and endure, you become stronger. You carry that strength into the next challenge, and the next, until growth becomes a way of life. So when you feel the trembling in your chest, the nervousness in your hands, the uncertainty in your mind, don't run from it. Recognize it. That is the signal that you are standing on the edge of growth. That is the space where vulnerability meets transformation. It will never feel comfortable, but it will always be worth it. The truth is this: growth and vulnerability are inseparable. To grow is to risk. To risk is to be vulnerable. And to be vulnerable is to be alive. Every breakthrough, every achievement, every transformation begins with a moment of uncertainty, where you choose courage over comfort. And when you choose vulnerability, you open the door to becoming more than you ever imagined. Leadership has long been associated with strength, control, and authority. We imagine leaders as the ones who have all the answers, who never falter, who stand tall and unshakable no matter the storm. But here is the truth that often gets overlooked. The most powerful leaders are not the ones who pretend to be invincible. They are the ones who have the courage to be vulnerable. Because real leadership is not about perfection. It is about connection, trust, and humanity. Think of the leaders who have impacted you most deeply. Were they the ones who projected flawless certainty, or were they the ones who admitted when they didn't know something? Were they the ones who never showed emotion, or the ones who cared enough to let you see their heart? Vulnerability in leadership creates space for authenticity, and authenticity builds trust. When a leader says, "I don't have all the answers, but I am willing to listen," it inspires more loyalty than any act of bravado ever could. Vulnerability in leadership is not weakness. It is influence. A boss who pretends to know everything shuts down creativity, but a leader who says, "I need your ideas," unlocks innovation. A teacher who never admits mistakes creates distance, but a teacher who says, "I got that wrong, let's try again," creates trust. A parent who hides their struggles may look strong, but a parent who shares, "I'm scared sometimes too," gives their children permission to be human. Leadership in every sphere of life, work, family, community, requires vulnerability, because leadership is not about commanding from a distance. It's about walking alongside others with honesty and courage. In life, vulnerability is equally essential. We often think that strength means carrying everything alone, proving we can handle it all without help. But life is not meant to be lived in isolation. Vulnerability allows us to ask for support, to admit when we're hurting, to lean on others in times of need. And far from weakening us, this interdependence makes us stronger. A chain is not strong because each link stands alone. It is strong because each link is connected. Consider this: when leaders hide behind a mask of invulnerability, they may look impressive for a time, but eventually that mask cracks. People don't follow perfection. They follow realness. They follow the leader who admits fear, but chooses courage anyway. They follow the parent who apologizes for their mistakes and models humility. They follow the friend who shows up in honesty rather than performance. Vulnerability doesn't diminish leadership. It amplifies it, because it allows others to see themselves in you. The same is true in our personal lives. Vulnerability deepens our relationships, because it creates space for trust and empathy. A spouse who can say, "I feel insecure sometimes," opens the door for intimacy. A friend who can say, "I'm struggling right now," opens the door for support. Without vulnerability, relationships become transactional, surface level, polite. With vulnerability, they become transformative, soul deep, and life-giving. And here's the paradox: when you live and lead with vulnerability, you will sometimes be misunderstood. There will be those who mistake openness for weakness. There will be those who misuse honesty. But the alternative, hiding, posturing, performing, will always cost more. Because when you shut down vulnerability, you shut down connection. When you silence vulnerability, you silence innovation. When you deny vulnerability, you deny yourself the chance to live fully. Leadership and life both demand courage. And courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to move forward in the midst of fear. Vulnerability is the soil where that courage grows. It is the invitation to step out from behind the mask, to show up as your true self, and to lead not from a pedestal, but from the heart. The world does not need perfect leaders, flawless parents, or invincible friends. The world needs people who are willing to be real, people who are willing to risk being seen, people who understand that vulnerability is not the opposite of strength, but the very definition of it. Because when we live and lead from that place, we don't just inspire others, we give them permission to find their own courage too. All of us at some point have tried to hide our feelings, hide our struggles, hide the parts of us we thought were too messy, too complicated, too unworthy to be seen. We build walls around our hearts, thinking those walls will protect us. But here's the truth we often discover too late. Hiding does not protect our peace, it suffocates it. The strength of being seen is not about exposure. It is about freedom. It is the moment we stop performing and start living. When you allow yourself to be seen, truly seen, you step into alignment with who you are. You stop wasting energy on masks, and you start channeling that energy into growth. Pretending is exhausting. Being real is liberating. Imagine the weight lifted when you no longer need to calculate every word to maintain an image. When you no longer need to silence your laughter or your tears. When you no longer need to edit yourself into something smaller or neater. The strength of being seen is the strength of authenticity, and authenticity is where peace begins. Being seen is not about telling everyone everything. It's not about spilling your deepest secrets to the world. It's about refusing to shrink yourself for the comfort of others. It's about showing up as you are, in your work, your relationships, your art, your dreams, and saying, "This is me." That declaration is not weakness. It is power. Because when you stand in your truth, you inspire others to do the same. And that ripple effect is how change begins. Of course, being seen is risky. People may not understand you. Some may criticize. Some may walk away. But here's what I've learned. The people who truly matter are not looking for your perfection. They are looking for your truth. And the ones who cannot hold your truth were never meant to carry it. You do not lose by being seen. You filter. You discover who is really aligned with your life and who only wanted the mask. The strength of being seen also lies in the way it deepens connection. When you are willing to share your joy, your pain, your dreams, your doubts, you give others permission to do the same. Suddenly the walls between us begin to fall. Vulnerability becomes the bridge, and across that bridge, trust grows. Think about the most meaningful conversations of your life. Were they the ones where you exchanged polite small talk, or the ones where you opened your heart and allowed someone to step inside? The moments we remember are the moments of being seen. And here is the paradox. The very thing we fear will weaken us. Being exposed, being vulnerable, is the thing that strengthens us most. Because courage is not built in hiding. Courage is built in visibility. Resilience is not born in isolation. It is born when we share our struggles and realize we are not alone. Freedom is not found in perfection. It is found in authenticity. The strength of being seen is also about claiming ownership of your story. When you hide, you hand over power to shame. But when you speak your truth, when you stand in your story, shame loses its grip. You begin to realize that your scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof of survival. Every time you allow yourself to be seen, you reclaim a piece of yourself that hiding tried to erase. So what does this mean for you? It means that the next time you feel the temptation to hide, to silence your voice, to wear the mask, pause. Ask yourself, is hiding really protecting me, or is it holding me back? Am I living for approval, or am I living in truth? The strength of being seen does not come from the absence of fear. It comes from the willingness to step forward, even when fear is present. And here is the invitation. Stop waiting for the world to give you permission to show up. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect confidence, the perfect response. The strength of being seen is not found in waiting. It is found in showing up now, imperfect, uncertain, but real. Because every time you choose to be seen, you choose courage over comfort, freedom over fear, and authenticity over approval. That is strength. That is power. That is the beginning of peace. We have walked through fear, through authenticity, through the power of connection, and through the courage of being seen. Once seen, and now as we close, I want to leave you with this truth. Vulnerability is not weakness. It never has been. Vulnerability is the heartbeat of courage, the birthplace of innovation, the foundation of love, and the path to true leadership. Every great act of strength begins with the willingness to be open, to risk, to show up without guarantees. The world will tell you to build walls, to wear masks, to hide your flaws, but walls isolate, masks exhaust, hiding drains the life out of your spirit. The world does not need your performance. It needs your presence. It needs your story, your heart, your realness. Because when you show up with vulnerability, you give others permission to do the same. You create a ripple effect of authenticity that reaches farther than you can ever imagine. Yes, there will be moments of fear. Yes, you will face criticism, rejection, and misunderstanding. But remember this: safety is not found in hiding. It is found in resilience. Strength is not found in perfection. It is found in persistence. Freedom is not found in control. It is found in authenticity. Vulnerability will not protect you from pain, but it will protect you from regret. And regret is far heavier to carry than rejection ever will be. So I invite you to choose courage over comfort. Choose honesty over performance. Choose connection over isolation. And most of all, choose to be seen. Because when you step out from behind the mask, when you stand in your truth, you don't just change your own life, you light the way for others to change theirs. The courage to be seen is not about shouting your story from rooftops. It is about refusing to shrink into silence. It is about looking at the world with all its noise and judgment and saying, here I am, imperfect, in progress, but whole. That declaration is not weakness. It is strength. It is the strength that transforms leaders, builds relationships, heals communities, and changes lives. So as you leave here today, carry this with you. Vulnerability is your power. The courage to be seen is your freedom. And the strength you are looking for has been inside you all along, not in your perfection, but in your willingness to be real. Go out and live it. Be brave enough to be seen, because the world doesn't need another mask. It needs you.